This is the Seahawkers Podcast, episode 450. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and I am joined by my good buddy and Yellowstone Seahawker, Adam Emmerich.
Yeah, still don't love the name, but 450, dude. 450. That feels like a significant one. Maybe not quite as significant as 500, but 450 going into a week against the Niners, feels like a big week.
It is a big week, man. This is, these milestone episodes, they only come around every 50, every 25, or every 100, depending on how you decide to measure it.
Yeah, exactly, right? I'd say every 100. Yeah, that feels right. That tracks.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then this isn't a milestone episode. We've got 50 more to go.
No, it's a half a milestone, but if we did happen to beat the Niners down in dirty Santa Clara this week, that'd be more than half a milestone, considering the Seahawks are on a 6-game losing streak against the 49ers coming into this matchup in week 11.
Yeah. And let me tell you right there is where one of my biggest issues is from what I've been hearing just throughout the week, because I feel like it's been a series of annoying bye-week narratives for me. And the 6-0 thing against the Niners, or 0-6, it's kind of one of them, because we've turned a page. Why are we just going off of Geno's time in that 0-6 comparison? Why aren't we starting over anew? It's not like it's Geno Smith's fault that we're 0-6 against the stupid 49ers.
No, not primarily. Although I will say, of all the teams that Geno plays and, with regularity as the Seahawks starting quarterback, the Niners have been maybe his toughest matchup where he has struggled the most. So not all his fault, but some of his fault. But yes, the new Mike Macdonald era, same winning percentage as the previous 5 games under the Pete Carroll era. So 0% winning percentage.
No, it's not great. So that part of it, I kind of get, just because, well, it's a bigger number than saying 0-1. And you are correct to point out that Geno hasn't played his best games against the Niners. In fact, I think you could say that his worst game of the season, up until his most recent worst game of the season, was his worst game of the season.
Right. Yeah. So annoying bye-week narratives. That's what you were talking about there. So there's that one. Is it also the Brock Purdy is undefeated against the Seahawks narrative? Is that one annoying you? Like, what are these other bye-week narratives? Do you want to get into some of the bye-week news before we really start breaking down 49ers matchup here?
Well, sure. Yeah, because one of them has to do directly with maybe the biggest piece of news coming out of the bye week. And Bryson McCartney, one of our members of the flock, emailed in and said, releasing T-Dot randomly? Is this a move to free up space for another player, or is it the start of a rebuild? Ugh. And yeah, Tyrel Dodson, after Mike Macdonald went into the bye week, analyzed everything, evaluated the roster, decided we have so much depth at linebacker that we could cut our leading tackler. In fact, if you view it through that lens, I feel very optimistic about the second half of the season. He's a guy who is expendable.
The leading tackler on the team, totally expendable. You're good.
Yeah, well, that's obviously the biggest analysis that came out of that bye week. Look at the team, right? It wasn't that, Connor Williams maybe needed to be swapped out, or there needed to be some moves on the offensive line, or gosh, any other big pieces within the team. It's no, we could not go another week with Tyrel Dodson continuing to be on the Seahawks team.
Well, it's definitely an interesting move, and I do find the obsession of the media and fans trying to parse this word rebuild in terms of this team. Like, I don't really care if it's a rebuild or not, because at the end of the day, when you bring in a brand new coach and you're trying to marry the players to the new system, you're going to find players that maybe married the previous system and did well that way, that do not work out well for the new system, and different types of personalities and your guys, right? As a head coach, that's what you're searching for. So the idea of rebuild or not rebuild or whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because there's going to be some significant change on this roster over the next this season and next season. Just any way you slice it. It's new coaches. Like, it's just, that's what it's going to be. If you want to call that a rebuild, fine. If you don't want to call it a rebuild, fine. Like, it doesn't matter because the point is that we all agree as 12s that there's levels to this league. And right now the Seahawks are either one of the worst of the middling teams or one of the best of the bad teams. And you can decide whichever one you like, which narrative you like out there in the, podcast universe there. But at the end of the day, it has to improve. It has to be better. There has to be changes made. It's something we were all talking about with the defense leading up until the Rams game. Like, something has to change. Do something, Mike. He does something, which is significant, and I think really does point towards the future. And, there's a portion of the media and the fan base, they're kind of wringing their hands about it and being like, oh no, is this a rebuild? I don't get it.
The more annoying narrative, though, that I feel has come out of it, not the one of here's the team trying to make some significant changes for the future direction of the team. It's a lot of it's focused on John Schneider, saying that basically John Schneider's a bum because he's made these 2 moves at linebacker now, and they obviously haven't worked out. They've made a trade. They've released a dude. And so John Schneider, like every move that he's made, since we don't look at the good moves, we only focus on the bad moves. John Schneider, obviously, he has to be the next guy to go because things haven't worked out perfectly for the first 8 weeks of the season.
That's interesting. I guess I hadn't tuned in much to some of that conversation, but I do know Schneider's been taking a lot of strays over the last couple of weeks, and in some ways rightfully so. But in terms of the linebacker position, so you get rid of Bobby Wagner because he's 97 years old and you're bringing in a new coach. I get it. That's fine. You don't want to shell out a big contract for Jordan Brooks because, again, new coach, you don't know how that meshes. Like, why try to put all those resources into a player that you're not even sure is going to work with this new guy, with your new coach? I really think they're just grabbing 2 dudes like Baker and Dodson, giving them cheap ass 1-year deals that you are not beholden to in any way, shape, or form to give you the flexibility to go out and pick up Ernest Jones, who's obviously an upgrade there in comparison to where they were at the beginning of the year. Why are we killing John Schneider over that? For grabbing 2 Band-Aids at the beginning of the year as you're recharting this roster again for a new head coach? I don't get it.
I think it's just bled over from the continued struggles on the offensive line where he does deserve criticism. Yes. And I feel like he's going to have to own and wear that comment about guards being overdrafted and overpaid now for the rest of the time until we have competent players at those spots. But it's around that I think it's bleeding over then to the linebacker spot. So that's, I guess, the main part of it that I have trouble with. Plus the idea of this is still a transition. And you even go back to all those other moves that it was Pete Carroll and John Schneider and trying to separate, well, who was the decision maker between those two? Was it all John Schneider? Was it all Pete Carroll? I can't differentiate from where I sit to decide which one of those moves that John Schneider has to own all of it. And so I'm kind of at the point of it being a relative clean slate for the general manager too, because this is going to have to be a relationship between the general manager, between the new head coach that they're going to have to work with. Yeah, I'm frustrated about the offensive line part, but to then allow it to bleed over to some of these other things, I can't go that far.
Yeah, it seems a little crazy. And then also too, I mean, it's not like this roster is devoid of talent by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, John Schneider has made a lot of really good moves that we should applaud. And at the end of the day, okay, rebuild or not rebuild, let's just call them transition years. Like, this is the first of the transition years. We're probably going to have another one next year. We're not winning the Super Bowl this year. We were never going to win the Super Bowl this year. We all know that. So it's more about process this year than it is about final results, just in terms of record. It's more about what the team looks like by the end of the year, how they're playing, how Coach Mike's philosophy is coming to life. and having some balance on both sides of the ball and finding their identity and their groove. And that's going to be dictated a bit by who they release and who they bring in over the course of the remaining months of the season here. But to me, the idea of now having Jones in the middle and then pairing him with the rookie and Tyrese Knight, I like some of the things I've seen out of Tyrese Knight to this point. And he's a guy that Coach Mike was on board with Schneider to bring in. That's one of his dudes. Like, let's get him out there. Let's have him play. If he's gotten to the point in his practice regime that he shows in practice that, look, I can play. I'm a serviceable player. Then, yeah, now it's time to get him out there and get reps and see if he can realize his full potential.
And it does lead me to that idea that I'm not super excited about the fact that they just allowed Dodson to walk, because if you end up having an injury in this linebacker group, I feel like he would have been a guy to at least have around. But I also understand it from the team perspective too. If it's going to cause an issue within the locker room and you have other dudes that you feel that, or like you said, it's not like we're going to the Super Bowl. So we could deal with not having that much depth, I suppose, at a spot where we've traditionally not had a lot of depth, and you just find a way to deal with it.
And oftentimes you have a young player, your risk on the injury side of things is significantly lower than it is with an older player.
Sure.
So the idea of maybe not having quite as much depth doesn't scare me nearly as much. And then also too, like, okay, so Tyrese Knight goes down with an injury. All right, you play a little more nickel. And who you bringing in? Radigan, like at that point, and he does things. He's not a bum, so I'm not that worried about it one way or the other. I was more worried about our safety depth and that sort of thing. And then along comes Coby Bryant, who is playing good football somehow and making me eat a whole ton of words that I think taste terrible, but I'm super happy to eat.
If he somehow continues on this upward trend, then yeah, I think we can be happy to eat the crow on this one.
Oh, 100%. And I was just looking at PFF, and again, not the end all be all grade of any one given player, but him and Julian are like in the top 25, both as safeties. And that's pretty impressive.
Keep it up. I want to see it. I also, you mentioned we may not be winning the Super Bowl this year. Can this week be our Super Bowl? Can beating the Niners be our Super Bowl victory?
If you want to consider it a Super Bowl win, if and when they win, then yeah, go for it, man. There's no rule that says
I just mean, of all the games left on the schedule that I want to win the most, it would probably be this one coming up this Sunday.
You can rope me into that one, I think, because if they don't win this one, then the rest of the season really is just about process and figuring out who you got and what you're trying to do and all that stuff. You win this one, give yourself an opportunity against the Cardinals, who they've looked good somehow. Then, yeah, all of a sudden you can think about playoffs, considering the playoff bracket and the teams that you're competing with. And I think you can get to the playoffs with 9 wins pretty easy. Shoot, you might even be able to sneak in the NFC playoffs with 8 wins. Like that may happen. So you get these 2 here, and now I'm saying there's a chance. And then it's kind of fun, right? Going into the postseason and all that. And so, yeah, maybe this is the Super Bowl, man. Maybe you're right.
I think you're going to have to get to 9 wins to make it into the playoffs. I'm pretty sure. And I think part of why it feels that, it's as such a big deal is because the path to victory, one, you look at past games and gosh, even this last game against the Niners, they didn't have their best player in Christian McCaffrey. Now McCaffrey's back. Now they have added help at receiver, and dude scores his first touchdown just last week. Was it just last week that Pearsall got his touchdown?
I think he got a touchdown last week, but he may have scored the week before. Either way, after the
he's starting to come on.
He's starting to come on. Mm-hmm.
So it just seems like this matchup then, where you felt like you had some ways in to victory on the last one. Now It's in San Fran or Santa Clara. You got Christian McCaffrey back in the backfield. You've maybe handicapped yourself a little bit by now starting a rookie at linebacker, but you do have an upgrade at Ernest Jones. So as pessimistic as I might be about the opportunity for a victory, it'll make it that much more fun if we actually do get a win.
Yeah, so I'm in the camp that it is less likely that they win this game than more likely, but it's more like 55-45. I don't feel like it's one of these things like a 6.5 point spread that Vegas has it at. I don't think that this is a moonshot to win this game. You go back and you look at the last game, and really the formula in the path to winning this game is pretty simple. Geno had the 2 picks. Chenault had the fumble on the kick return. And that was more or less the difference in the game. They were within 6 points through the majority of the fourth quarter there. It's not like it was a game that was totally out of reach, that they had no chance. In fact, coming down to the last drive for the 49ers, the Seahawks get a stop there instead of just melting down on that long run at the end of the game. They have a shot to go and tie it up or try to take the lead. So it's not like they were unbelievably dominated last time. It wasn't 35-3.
Right.
It was a close game overall. So when I'm looking at this matchup, Brandon, like, there's some simple things that need to go the Seahawks way that are in their control. And first and foremost is turnovers, man. And I know that's a metric that Pete would always point at, and people think it's just like an old school boring one and all that. But number one, point blank period, they have to limit the turnovers in this game, and that would definitely go a long ways to them being ultra competitive.
It's been a problem. And when you can't seem to get turnovers from the other team, whether it's fumble luck going their way, whether it's just not able to put the kind of pressure that you need on the other team, the way that the 49ers offensive line has been playing, I feel like Purdy's been under duress quite a bit. And we're even able to get after him a little bit in the previous matchup. Tampa, in their last game against the Niners, they were able to get after him. That does provide you with an opportunity of, you make him make some mistakes too. And if Geno can limit his, then it could easily swing it in the Seahawks' favor.
In the past, when we've played the Niners, or anybody that I've watched play the Niners that I've been rooting for to beat them, I've talked a lot about Purdy turdies and just a little bit of pressure, and all of a sudden he's throwing picks and things like that.
Yeah.
But this year, I think we have to give Brock Purdy some credit. He has played way better under pressure and has become better on the playmaking side of things, scrambling around and hitting dudes, or at least just getting rid of the ball, and has been much better in that regard. So I'm not banking on that at all. I think the Seahawks defensively, the key to this game for them is just simply going to be tackling. That was a huge issue in the last game against the Niners. I mean, we can all remember Purdy scrambling for that third down pickup deep in their own end, and Baker taking that ridiculous angle where he just gets outrun by, Mr. Irrelevant, right? Well, Baker gone. He ain't there no more, so you're not going to get that. And Ernest Jones is a lot faster. And the tackling against the Rams looked really good. And if they can do that, because a lot of the Niners scores and a lot of their big plays on offense were explosives. And you limit that, and then they become a little pedestrian down in the red zone. And all of a sudden, like, you're right in this.
You talk about the Purdy turdies. He's had his moments, though. He's had games where, well, shoot, against the Chiefs, he had 3 turnovers. Against the Cardinals, he had 2 interceptions. And even this last week against the Bucks, the throws were there. The Bucks just didn't capitalize on it. There were 2 throws that he had that they were interceptable, and the Bucks just, they failed. So I think you have to then capitalize on those moments when you have them. But to your point, they are becoming fewer and far between compared to his previous seasons.
Yeah, for sure. And look, he's always been the luckiest man on the planet when it comes to throwing it directly to the other team, and they just don't catch it. And again, another reason why I've kind of stopped like rooting or relying on it in my fandom, because I'm just so annoyed at that horseshoe that's, implanted so firmly up his ass. It's annoying, but especially defensively, if they can tackle against a team that's really hard to get to the ground. Debo and CMC are nightmares to get to the ground. And CMC didn't look great on the ground last week, but with our luck, this will be the week after he knocked off some rust and he's going to look great on the ground, but still a factor in the pass.
It was too hot to play him too much in Tampa. He had to really keep him on the bench because it was too hot.
You're too hot? Aww.
That's what Shanahan said. He said it was so hot down in Tampa that he didn't want to kill him, is I think how he put it.
Those sweltering early November or mid-November temperatures, like, get out of here. God, he's the king of excuses.
Oh, they should have lost that game, too.
I know.
When you miss 3 field goals and still win. Like, I think Unreal. They borrowed some of that Purdy horseshoe.
Yeah, they do get away with crap that they should never get away with. And I think bringing up Moody is a great topic, because I really do think that the Seahawks have an advantage in special teams if they can hold on to the ball while returning it, right. Unlike the last game. But otherwise, they have a better special teams unit, and you pair that with the way the Niners perform in the red zone. The Niners are 28th in the league in touchdowns in the red zone this year. 28th. Wow. It's been a nightmare for them down there. And the Seahawks have been delightfully average at red zone TD percentage on defense at 14th. And I think that's a massive advantage. If you can keep them out of the end zone and keep them from scoring on the explosives, like the one that Debo got in the last game where we had Mafe and drop I was going to say too.
Yeah, the red zone percentage is great, but all the touchdowns that we gave up to them were huge explosive touchdowns.
Yeah, and then I think one Kittle touchdown in the red zone, but Kittle always kills us. So that's just, you just got to bake that in as to something you're going to have to overcome, it feels like. But if you can not give up the big explosive touchdowns, and I know that I've said on this podcast 1,000 times that the coaches being terrified about explosive drives me crazy. Uh-huh. I think this is one of those few matchups where it's like, all right, let's put a little more emphasis on that and not worry about in the green zone so much.
So now you're coming around. You're flip-flopping. Adam the flip-flopper.
No, this one matchup. But still be aggressive.
Yeah, I'd like to see them be a little bit aggressive too. And, when you have a safety like Coby Bryant that can be back there and sit on some of that stuff, you've got the advantage.
You should have the advantage. And
this better be a good Coby Bryant game. We can't be all hyped up about him and then have him come out and give up like 2 deep touchdowns where he's supposed to be the safety help.
Right. Look, the reason Kobe's been great is because of Julian Love. And so we won't bank on Coby. We'll bank on Julian Love being very good, which makes Coby good. And so really it'll be a wash that we hyped up Coby here because Julian will have our back.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I don't think we can pass over the Niners defense and talk about what that might mean to the Seahawks offense. Can we get the ground game going against this Niners team? Because that was one of the things that I definitely saw Tampa working to, especially late in the game. Now, when they needed it the most, unfortunately, is when the Niners defense bowed up and they were stopping everything up the middle. But for a good part of the second half of that football game, Tampa was having a ton of success going right at the heart of the 49ers defense.
They're banged up front and getting thin on that defensive line. And then you factor in the news that Bosa has yet to practice all week with a hip injury that he says is extremely painful. And it's very much up in the air whether or not that Bosa plays in this game. And he is their pass rush. It's a lot like the Lions with Hutchinson. It's the same thing with Bosa and the Niners, where he is that dude. You combine that with Travarius Ward. He's out with some sort of personal issue. I don't know what it is. Wish him the best and all that, but their top corner.
Oh, I think he had a death in the family or something.
Oh, that's awful. Well, I feel terrible for him, but better for our deal that he's not playing. I think that there's going to be opportunities against this defense, especially if Bosa doesn't play. I think that would be a huge boon for somebody like Abe Lucas, who's coming back this week, Brandon, in his first start, not having to deal with Nicholas Bosa right out the gate.
Hey, don't be saying that so definitively. It's coming back. You better not jinx it when it's this close to happening.
All I know is Grubb said in his presser that he made a gigantic step yesterday and was looking good. And you know how Mike is when it comes to injury stuff. He is very cautious, and he's like, yep, he's on track. We're looking good, all that. If Mike's saying that, then I feel pretty good about it.
I hope so, because we've waited so long. And even if Bosa is out there, then I feel a little bit better because the Leonard Floyd on the opposite side, who? I know he's a who guy for you, but the reason why he becomes known is because teams then focus so much on Bosa that Floyd is just available then to make plays. And that's what I worry about. But if it ends up being Floyd is the only guy that you really have to be concerned about, yeah, you can do things like, give him a little chip and not have to worry about that. Like, then he can be handled. It's not just one-on-one and he beats that one-on-one matchup, 2-3 times a game.
Yeah, he doesn't need a chip. Like, look, even if when Bosa's out there, he's been pretty bad this year. He has not played up to his mediocre level over the majority of his career. He's just not a great player at the end of it and really kind of second fumes here. So, no, I do not fear Leonard Floyd at all in any way, shape, or form.
You do this with some of these mid-tier dudes, and then they end up having their career games against us, and you got to eat the crow. Don't let yourself get sucked in, man.
It's rare. I'm generally right on this sort of thing, and I feel very confident on this one. Now, look, if Abe Lucas does not come back for this game, then I rescind all of that previous stuff because even Leonard Floyd can beat the pants off of my mom, who's out there playing right tackle. So, yeah.
Adam the flip-flopper. He's back.
That's not a flip-flop. It's conditional, but it's certainly not a flip-flop.
Wow, I didn't realize the election wasn't over. Adam with all his political wiggle words.
Wow.
Oh, it's conditional. My opinions are conditional.
Yes, there's an if and then this type situation here. If Abe Lucas plays, which it looks like he should, and all signs are pointing to yes, if I ask the Magic 8-Ball, then I don't worry about Leonard Floyd, and he's a middling player that I don't care about. If not, well, okay then. All right, because even the worst pass rusher in the league can look good against Jarrell, and then he left out to dry Bradford. And I think that's the other thing about Abe coming back that's important is the best that we've seen out of Anthony Bradford has been when he's been paired with Abe Lucas to help him out. And so it could be a force multiplier kind of situation having Abe back, even if he's not to top Abe standards, which I don't think he will be.
Yeah.
But just be middle of the road, which I think is totally plausible.
Yeah. And just the same goes for Connor Williams. Aim for the middle of Geno's body every single time on that snap and be middle of the road in terms of your snapping proficiency.
Are we sure that in this bye week that they haven't made a change to Olu? Like, do we know that for sure? Because that feels like one of those things we're all just assuming didn't happen. And then we're going to turn on the TV on Sunday and go, oh, look at that. Olu's out there.
They may have made a change with Olu because when I look at the depth chart, I see him third behind Jalen Sundell now. Jalen Sundell might be the backup center at this point.
What is going on here? I watched Olu Oluwatimi play professional NFL football last season for a couple games, and you know what he wasn't? A total liability like Connor Williams. Like, what is going on here? Is this a Scott Huff problem? Does he just not know?
He's in the Christian Haynes doghouse.
Exactly. This is kind of what I'm talking about.
I don't know. That's, again, why I go back to the middle linebacker move and be like, are we sure that was the biggest problem that they worked out in the bye week? Because it feels like there's more to be done here. And maybe it is getting under center a little bit more. Maybe they can make that shift. That would come in handy against this Niners team too. Yes.
Run a little play action where Geno is good. Give the defensive line some eye candy to look at with the play action so that they're not just, pinning their ears back and coming at you. I think that would be huge. And I think this is one of the most interesting parts about this game, Brandon, is this is the first time we have seen Coach Mike and his cronies have a bye week. And let's see, oftentimes with Pete, we were like, okay, we'll see what all changes and all that. And he'd kind of come back and, it was a little bit around the edges over here and that sort of thing. And it was always, to me, slightly disappointing in terms of if things really needed to be shaken up. It just in personnel wise this last week, I mean, that kind of shows me that Mike might be a little more aggressive about this. I'm going to be fascinated to see what the changes look like specifically on offense.
Well, and not only is it a bye week before an opponent, but it's a bye week in front of a divisional opponent that you've already seen once this season. And so then you can go back. Not only are you preparing for a divisional opponent, but you can go back and look at what they did not so long ago and hopefully use that against them coming up this Sunday.
That would be awesome, man. Other injury news that I found interesting. Trent Williams also not practicing with an ankle. If you take away two premier trench players on each side of the ball for the Niners, this gets real interesting real quick.
Two premier trench players and Charvarius Ward, who has given DK Metcalf some trouble in previous matchups, and in a game where DK is coming back from being injured. I like that too.
Absolutely. It could bode well for the offense. And like I said, I did What If this morning. And
you should flip-flop to thinking that the Seahawks should be favored to win this game.
I don't flip-flop, Brandon. So I'm not going to do it.
All right.
I'll tell you what. I will make a conditional situation here with if Trent Williams doesn't play, if Bosa doesn't play, the punter continues to be out. The
field goal kicker.
No, punter too.
The punter, Wisnowski's out too?
He's out too. Special teams could be a boon here for the Seahawks. Then I would flip-flop. No, wrong term. I would have a conditional change to my scoring prediction on What If this morning.
Either that or they just decide to go full 1950s style football and run Christian McCaffrey behind Kyle Juszczyk for the entire game and jelly our Seahawks defense.
We'll see. We'll see if that change that they made for the Rams game, kind of getting more single gap centric, is something that is sustainable or something they stick with. I was seeing in some of the advanced stats that when it comes to playing single high compared to two high safeties, the Seahawks have been really bad in the run game playing two high safeties. So
right.
I would expect a steady dose of more single high stuff coming up here against the Niners.
Well, that is going to put the spotlight straight onto Coby Bryant then in the passing game.
Why isn't Julian Love your single high guy?
He's your box guy.
He's not just a box guy.
He's more of your box guy. You mean you would rather have Coby Bryant up in the box?
No. I'd rather have Julian Love out on the field than Coby Bryant if I'm choosing between either of them.
I'm saying one of them's playing in the box and one of them's playing the free safety spot in single high.
In single high?
Which guy are you giving the single high responsibility to?
I mean, can I just put Trey Brown out there instead and take Coby off the field?
Flip-flopping on Coby now. He can't even be on the field. I don't
trust him still. He had a couple nice games, but I don't trust him.
I understand that because thinking of that terrifies me a little bit too, because it just does.
Yeah.
Whether it's Pearsall that ends up running deep, I guess he would be the guy that you would worry about running deep because Debo doesn't really do that so much. He's more of the catch underneath. Is Jennings hurt too? He got dinged up The game against Tampa. He's not, I don't think he's on the injury report, but he had to come out of the game a couple times.
Interesting. Okay. Because of all the receivers, Jennings is the one that scares me the most.
Yeah. Can we put like 3 dudes on him on third down? Because that's just where they go every single time.
Yeah. Look, and I think Ayuk out, Pierce all in thing is kind of a wash. Sure. I don't know that that's a big needle mover one way or the other. And then, Debo is obviously the gadget guy. That's what he does, and he's damn good at it. So, yeah, in terms of getting beat deep, I don't have really what the Niners do with their explosives. It's all stuff that's run after the catch and breaking tackles. Like, it's not just stacking a DB and getting on top of him and then, going deep. And Purdy's not that thrower of the football anyways.
No, it's when you see Debo wide open deep, it's because they've run him into a crowd and someone's failed to go with him, and then he's wide open and Purdy can just drop it into a 10-yard window.
Right. The deep vertical passing game is not a strength of the 49ers. It hasn't been for a long time. So it's not something that terrifies me too much. It's more just that underneath stuff and bad angles and bad tackling, man, because that was really what was killing the Hawks when they were playing them at home here a couple weeks ago.
Bad tackling against a Niners team that is really good at breaking tackles.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't have those two things combine. Then it's bad for you.
No. So while I do think that the Seahawks are coming into this a underdog, I don't think it's a healthy underdog situation. And I think they've got a legitimate shot and a legitimate path here to win this football game. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to be having false hope before we go into the Cardinals game. And that feels like what would happen to me as a fan,
right?
If I'm going to make it all about me.
Well, and it's kind of how this season has gone. You get the 3 wins straight out of the gate. You're like, oh, yeah, here we go. This team's going to the Super Bowl. And then you come back down to earth a little bit. Then you get a really good win, and you're like, okay. And in hindsight, maybe not that great of a win, but a decent enough win against the Falcons. You're like, okay, hey, we're still at the top of the division. We have some opponents coming up that you beat these guys, and you just can, you can hang in there. And now we haven't hung in there.
No, the Giants and the Rams losses are just backbreakers at this point.
Right. And you can start to make up for that, though, by beating the Niners and then the Cardinals, who, we're still not sure if they're good or not, because I think Car and Renton gets at it with one of her mailbag questions. Says, this is my first time writing into the show rather than just popping into the live chats at different shows. Do either of you have a hard time taking the Cardinals seriously? Yeah. Every time I look at their score or who they're facing, my brain's first instinct is to dismiss it and not even care if they win or lose. I have to remind myself that it matters if they win a game. They've sucked for so long that I no longer register them a threat of any kind. Do you guys feel similarly? Or is this due to the fact that I've only really started to understand football in the last few years when the Cards have sucked?
Hey, look, I'm with you, Car. They're not a franchise you should take seriously until they put together about 4 or 5 good seasons in a row. Like, it just... All right, if you have a flash in the pan and look good for 8-9 games, like, still not buying it with Kyler Murray. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's the captain of hot starts and big time fades. I don't trust it. I don't see it. What does scare me about the Cardinals, and this is legit to me, is they are good at running the football. And man, if that run defense performance against the Rams was a mirage, and then we go into that Cardinals game and we just get James Conner to death, like, I could see that, and that'd be demoralizing.
Oh yeah, especially if you have a big game from CMC coming back at full strength and then go to Conner. That would be frustrating.
Yeah. Are we sure CMC's at full strength?
He can't stand the heat, but it's probably not going to be an 80-degree day in Ninerland either this weekend.
Oh, I don't know. Depends if you ask the whiny ones on the sunny side of the stadium. They'd probably tell you that it's like 95 degrees. But I'm a little dubious of the idea of having double Achilles tendonitis for the majority of the year and then all of a sudden you're good. Like, and oftentimes when you're coming back from stuff like that, you come back, you play one game, and he's been very limited in practice this entire week. Like, that stuff can flare back up again. I got to see it first for a while out of him.
He should just take his time then coming back. Although, does it really matter necessarily with this Niners team that feels like that whoever they put there at running back, whether it's Jordan Mason or Isaac Guerrero, all three of those guys they find ways to manufacture good run games.
They do. And Kyle's pretty good at that sort of thing. It's one of let's see, if you're looking at the things that Kyle Shanahan does well is number one is make excuses. Number two is throw everybody else under the bus.
3 is lose double-digit leads late in the game. 10-point
leads in the fourth quarter. And then 4 is design a good run game. That's the Kyle Shanahan list of strengths right there.
It is number 4, but I'm hoping that we can take advantage of what he's really good at number 3. Now, I don't want to be down 10 points in the second half, but if we are, we need to use that against him.
I feel like if it does end up that way, where we're down 10 going into the fourth, end of the third, like, we got him right where we want him. Like, I'm excited about that.
We've also got Carr emailing in saying, what exactly do you want to see from Mike and his coaching staff by the end of the season to feel good about the direction we're going?
Well, defensively, gosh, it all comes down to stuff we've been harping on all year. Just more consistency in the run game on both sides of the ball.
Mm-hmm. And part of it, too, is just how they're able to bounce back and build versus if you keep seeing things slide rather than, that's why I think it made us a little bit more optimistic with how the defense showed up against the Rams game, because they could kind of turn on a dime a little bit and make enough changes to really be in that game, in a game that they probably should have won when it came down to it, if not for the turnovers. Here's another thing. If they end up having a second half of the season where they turn the ball over as frequently as the first half of the season, then I wouldn't feel good about the direction. So I guess the opposite of that, if they can find a way then to limit the amount of turnovers, to be more disciplined, they've got to find a way to not turn the ball over as much.
Yeah, I think that's first and foremost offensively. And, you bring up the penalties, and while I don't think that they're an overwhelming problem as they have been in years past, there has been some really poorly timed ones that have been backbreakers. And that just is one of those things that you feel a little snake bit by, but I think they can get better there. Just seeing them, like, having Abe come back and having him finish out the season strong and seeing what that does for Bradford, considering our right guard is what it is, according to Mike Macdonald. Like, that's one of the things that gives me hope going into this offseason too. Like, going back to the Schneider conversation, like, as much as everybody's like, well, John's in charge now, he is working in tandem with this coach. And clearly when your head coach goes, yeah, right guard is what it is, our guards as a whole is what it is, he's not happy. And there's going to be changes there. I
think it was Hawk Blogger that pressed him a little bit on the Schneider comment too, about guards being overdrafted and overpaid. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Mike did a pretty good job answering that question in a diplomatic way that also made you feel like that he didn't necessarily agree with that.
Right. Yeah, I don't think he does, because he's talked about it over and over again, what type of team he wants to be, and tough in the trenches is first and foremost of that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Kind of leads into this next one, too, in terms of the direction. Do you want a new offensive coordinator if Grubb's play calling looks the same by the end of the season?
No. I'm going to give Ryan Grubb 2 years because I don't have anything that, contingent that would change that. So there's no reason for me to change it.
You don't want to flip-flop on your Ryan Grubb position.
I do what?
Yeah, I feel similarly. I think that even though we didn't see a huge ground game, they put a little more emphasis on the run. I felt like the mixture to me was a lot better in the Rams game. Like, I guess I don't get too hung up on the idea of, oh, you got to establish the run early. It's more of the idea of keeping the defense honest. I'd like to see more of those plays under center, just because, we went back and we did that look at just how deficient it was. And I feel like they really are conceding the line of scrimmage by being in shotgun so frequently. So even if they're under center and they tend to be pass heavy, just because Geno is, you're taking away one of Geno's strengths by not featuring him more in play action. And even the stats nerds agree that you don't have to, really establish the run early on to get the defense worried about the run, especially when you have a guy like Ken Walker in the backfield. Like they are going to focus on stopping him first. And so if you're running under center on first down, naturally the linebackers are going to creep up close to the line of scrimmage, and that's going to make those intermediate throws just that much more open for Geno Smith.
I've spoken about this ad nauseum, and I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing it, but I'm concerned less about run pass ratio than I am about formationally what they're doing, being whether you're under or whether you're in the gun. And I think that's the more important thing that I need to see some growth from when it comes to Ryan Grubb. And, not have maybe condense the splits just a little bit between the offensive linemen, get under center. And even if you're still throwing the ball and you only increase your run pass ratio to make yourself, like, instead of being dead catfish last in it,
right,
like, maybe 25th, like, I'll take that as long as formationally, like, we get out of being gun dependent.
What do you think our record will be at the end of the season? Asked Carly. Now, to be fair to you and your stance in the past, I feel like I've heard 6-11 come out of your mouth here recently.
Yeah. 6-11 feels about right. But I don't feel super confident in that until after this game.
Right.
Like, I just want to see
the bye week adjustments, what they can do. It does make, it's going to be, this game and then the Cardinals game after it. I mean, you lose these two games, and I think I'm on board with you in terms of the 6-11, because where do your two wins come from? One of them being the Bears, the other one being the Jets, just off of the top of my head.
Bears.
You have to come up with other wins beyond that one, and there might be a third in there.
Yeah, I'd say the floor's 6, and I'd say the ceiling's 9. Like that's where it feels like for me right now. But because I got to pull up the schedule.
Yeah, I got it right here. After the bye week, it's Niners, Cardinals. Then you got Jets, and then Cardinals again in Arizona. And then the final.
You split with the Cards.
Okay. If we get late season Cards and how they've tailed off traditionally in the second half of the season, I can understand that. Packers, Vikings, both those games at home. Bears, Rams on the road to close out the year.
I think you can easily get the Rams again. I mean, it's not like that game was nip tuck, and there's easy things to clean up in that situation.
Do you want to win the Rams game at the end of the season?
Yes, forever. Yes, always. Yes.
Okay. I'm just saying, if both of us are going into, if the Rams continue to be bad, and this is like, because this has the potential of, which one of us ends up being the worst team in the division and gets the better draft pick. Like, do you want to beat the Rams, but then have them pick ahead of you in the draft and then have them take, I don't know, a dude in the trenches that you may have wanted? That's going to be hard to, like, I'm always beat the Rams too. But when I look at it through that lens, I may be a flip-flopper.
I do think that, I don't know, the idea of going into these games, going down the stretch of the last part of the year and trying to jockey for your draft.
That's not going to happen. Yeah. I just mean, as far as, would I be that upset about another loss to the Rams, knowing that?
Oh, I could cope with it a lot more knowing that the draft pick would be higher. Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Because then we can rub that in Rams' face when we take another dude that maybe they wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like we got with Byron Murphy, although.
That's right. Maybe they did want him. He wasn't from Florida State. I don't know.
That's true.
But, I mean, okay, so we go down the list here. I think the Niners is more likely a loss than a win. I think the Cards, 2 games against the Cards, that's a split. Jets, you should win that game. Bears, the Bears conversation is hilarious. You should win that game. And, yeah, I do think that, so that gets you to 3 right there. And I think you get one of the Packers or Vikings because they are both a little bit up and down as teams right now. They're good teams, just not quite a great team because of consistencies. Sam Darnold's, the wheels starting to fall off here a little bit. Jordan Love's been banged up all year. You could probably get one of those. And then you can get to 5 more wins pretty easy here.
So the ceiling is 10-7. The floor is 6-11. You're what? You're satisfied as long as it's not 6-11?
I'm satisfied if it is 6-11. As long as the defense starts to look better.
Okay.
The Grubb starts to pull his head out of his butt. And there's significant changes. And I see growth in some of the young players and coherent football philosophy going down the stretch. They could give away back a couple wins and end up with 4 wins or with 3 wins. And I'd still be happy if all of that
I feel
happened.
like if we're seeing those things, then we should at least get 3 more wins.
I agree with you.
Okay. That's why, to me, 6 would be disappointing.
If you choose to be disappointed about 6 wins, you certainly can be.
I think that we won't be seeing those things that we talked about wanting to see if we end up with 6 wins.
I think about it in these terms. Like Dan Campbell, first year in Detroit. And I understand that roster was far more devoid of talent than this roster. But they just looked like a coherent football team that played hard for their coach and adopted his personality. That sort of thing is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Something you can build on more than a difference between 6 and 9 wins. Like, whoop-de-doo.
And Carly's final question, which division rival are you most afraid of this season and going into the future?
Cardinals.
For both?
Oh, I thought you had to choose one for both.
Oh, I don't know. You could take it either way as this season and the future, and then pick one for each, or this season and the future. Yeah.
Okay. I would start with this season Niners, future Cardinals. Do you agree with that, Brandon?
I have to see more of the Cardinals for them to even be on my list. So I would say this season Niners, future is the Rams still, because as long as they have Sean McVay, I will continue to be concerned. I think the more long-term coach within the division will continue to be Sean McVay.
Between him and Shanahan? Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Gannon could be around for a long time. He's doing a heck of a job down there. You got to give him credit. The thing about it is I think about it less in terms
They continue to hitch themselves to Kyler Murray, though.
I mean, not continue to. They gave him the one contract.
Yeah.
I don't know. Kyler's not, we've talked about this before. Kyler's not terrible. He's just not great.
Yeah.
But with that said, it's less about what the Cardinals are and aren't doing. It's more about the idea that this is the last hurrah of this Niners squad, as Purdy's going to have to get paid. If Kyle doesn't get him to a Super Bowl and win, he's gone. You can't hold this team together anymore. And then Stafford's going to be gone from the Rams here sooner rather than later. And at that point, then I just don't worry about those 2 franchises as much as I do the Cardinals. So it's less about the Cardinals and more about the future for the Niners and Rams, which looks bleak. And I hope that they all understand that.
I feel like with the ownership and coaching in LA that they end up, they're able to find a way to transition better than a team like the Niners, a team like the Cardinals, who historically ownership has gotten in the way and screwed things up. So that's why it's the Rams for me.
Okay. Well, Staffords don't grow on trees.
No, but they were able to make that switch and I feel like they'd be able to find a dude who could quarterback in McVay's system and make it work.
Maybe, I guess. I don't think they can, and they won't.
Yeah.
Because screw those guys.
If I'm being hopeful, then yeah, screw the Rams.
Not hopeful. I'm being 12 realistic, which is just filled with to the brim with sports hate.
All right, let's get to the second half of the show.
All right.
A couple more emails, Adam, as we get into the second half of the show. We asked for mailbag questions to come in, and the flock, they didn't let us down.
No, man. Little flockers came through, as they always do.
Martin says, hello, lazy podcasters.
Yes.
Now,
fair.
A real interesting one. Our punter. He'll be even more expensive next contract. Do we find a new, younger, cheaper punter next season, or do we continue to pay Big Balls Dixon? As a fellow Aussie, I think if we go rookie, we look at Mason Fletcher from Cincy. Regards, email without an accent yet, Martin.
Right on, Martin. I'm guessing that the kid from Cincinnati's another Aussie.
Maybe.
Okay.
Or just a dude, maybe follows Cincinnati football.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think you need to give another big contract to a punter. Look, at this point, not trying to take anything away from Dixon. I love Michael Dixon. He's been fantastic. But at the end of the day, the punting talent in the league has got up a lot in the last 3, 4, 5 years. So, yeah, I think you can find a dude and save some money there and, I don't know, maybe overpay a guard.
And I have confirmed that yes, Mason Fletcher is indeed Aussie, born in Melbourne, Australia.
Done. Draft that kid.
Draft him. And you can do it in the 5th round, just like you did Michael Dixon.
That's right. In fact, half the team probably won't even notice that it changed because he's going to sound just like the other guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's flawless.
Hugh, father of our Pick'em League overlord, writes in and says, hi, both. I haven't written in a while, but thought I would share some things I've been thinking about other than confiscating Evie's laptop, that is. After 8 weeks, are we a better side than last season? I would say maybe, but I feel the potential to be a better side is greater than last season. I believe we made the right hire and Mike as head coach, but I feel we got the levels of experience wrong in the coordinator roles. On the defensive side of the ball, we have Mike, who is in charge, really, who has the experience. We hired Adam Dirty at DC, is really Mike's day-to-day guy who has NFL experience, and also Leslie Frazier as assistant HC, who's more defensively minded, who has NFL experience. We then hired Grubb as OC, who has no NFL experience, and it is showing. He has shown the potential in the passing game and the way he schemes guys open. That's genuinely exciting. However, I believe he's showing a lack of understanding of how to run an NFL offense and doesn't have other people in the top-end leadership group to guide him. Had we gone the other way and hired a no NFL experience DC to work with Mike and an OC with NFL experience, we could effectively plow through, as Mike is always going to lean more toward the defense. After all, that's what he's known for. Then I think we could be in a better position. The other thing was something Adam mentioned the other week, which was something I had been thinking about, the emergence of the discarded quarterback. As defenses become more and more complicated, is it really that surprising that quarterbacks who have been in the league for a while had to go, been discarded, and had to sit behind a starter for a while, then starting and being successful and coming to the fore? Darnold, Dalton, Minshew, Goff, Mayfield, Love. I know he wasn't discarded, but he did sit behind Rodgers, and, of course, our very own Geno Smith. Is it now unfair to draft a quarterback and expect them to start right away and be successful? Does it not make more sense to draft and sit, or pick up a quarterback who has sat and learned elsewhere? With that in mind, I'd quite like us to draft a quarterback this year, Al can go, and let them sit behind Geno for a year or two, learn with no pressure or expectation, and then in a couple of years be ready, rather than taking a draft lottery pick or having to overpay for an experienced quarterback like the Rams with Stafford. Anyway, sorry for the essay. Hopefully it all makes sense. Go Hawks from Hugh.
Go Hawks, Hugh. Let's break this into the 2 parts here, Brandon. So quarterbacks and development, and then coordinators. I'm going to take quarterbacks and development because everybody's tired of hearing me talk about the coordinators. At the end of the day, look, I feel like the NFL has gotten to this weird, impatient place with quarterbacks and just putting savior expectations on all these kids coming out of college. And I don't think they do him any favors. We heard Jared Goff say on the Rich Eisen show that he thought it took about 6 years for it to really click for a lot of these guys. It was not uncommon for teams to wait 3-4 years with their first round draft picks back in the day. Like, that was the norm. Somehow we got away from that in our vapid instant gratification culture, that these guys have to come in and be great right away. Now, look, there's occasionally the guy that comes in, like CJ Stroud, who you sit there with Case Keenum during the offseason and you're doing your thing, and it's just night and day. Clearly, CJ Stroud ready to go, or whoever it was. Davis Mills is who he was battling, I guess. It's clear as day. He's ready to go, and he's better than that guy. That happens one in every, 10 of these kids that come out. Like, to expect all of them to do that is outrageous. I think, and I keep hearing this with the Anthony Richardson conversation, and it makes me insane. Like, the idea that all these pundits are out there saying, well, this is so stupid. You got to put AR out there because if he doesn't play, then he can't learn. Okay, well, let me tell you, you smooth-brained analyst, like, how this actually works. Anthony Richardson doesn't have the skill set, the basic skill set, to compete at a basic level in the NFL so that when he goes in and gets those reps, that they're beneficial to him. No, you're putting him out there before he's even close to ready to play at this level and even have the basic tool set to do it. And now you're destroying him. And so now you pull him out, you kill his confidence, and then bring him back in, where if you just had some patience and realized that, guess what? You can get better at practice. And you don't have to have reps in the game. That's what practice is for. Get these guys built up for a couple of years until they have the baseline skill set, confidence, and comfortableness in their offense to go out there so that the reps that they get at that point going forward are actually beneficial. Quit wrecking these guys. It's insane to me. That's the way I feel about it, Brandon. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, it's not you that's wrong. It's the owners that have certain expectations. And I think when, as an owner, they see their general manager and coaching staff investing in a quarterback early in the draft, they have a certain set of expectations that go along with it because they have seen other teams go out there and draft a quarterback high and then be immediately competitive and have the organization completely turn around. And I think it's some of the bad owners that have that expectation set. And so, because that's what they want to happen, that's how they end up getting ultimately what they deserve in these quarterbacks not being ready, despite that. Because in a lot of these situations too, hey, if you don't draft Anthony Richardson in the top 5, top 10, some other team's going to do it. And now maybe they manage him a little bit differently. Who knows? But guys with that much talent ultimately go that early. And I think it's really hard for some of these owners to be that patient.
Yeah. Well, then they're stupid ass owners. Like, it's so dumb. And I'm not saying that they have to sit 3 years either. Right. Oh, no. Like, if Mahomes was ready after a year, then you put him out there. It took Jordan Love 3 years before he was ready. Obviously Stroud came in ready right away. You see Jaden Daniels, he's coming in ready right away. That is not the norm. In fact, it's the outlier.
No, but I think there's also the aspect of it too, that a lot of times when these guys come in out of college, there's a blend of talent through their athleticism that you can find a way to get them out there and play the position and have a little bit of success as they learn. The Seahawks, they leaned heavily more on Russ's athleticism through those, especially the first half of the season. And I think that then allowed him to get some comfort, get some confidence, and before they then turned the reins over to him. The way that they managed that transition with Russ, it was really interesting because you go back and you watch that first half of the season, they were real careful about, wanting to ask him to do too much. And I don't think that other coaches put up those same types of guardrails on their young quarterbacks.
Right. And I think that there's some major commonalities between Stroud, Daniels, and Russ in this example. And that is all coming in Bo Nix, who is playing well in his first season. They all come in and they've got enough mobility to keep themselves out of harm's way and to affect the opposing defense. And they're all extremely accurate in college. Like, you see the guys that come in, and we'll just keep it to the AR discussion, that, you know, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn at negative 5 feet. Like, I mean, he can't hit anything. And yeah, he's mobile as hell, but he's going to struggle, and those reps are going to be lost, and you're basically just going to ruin the prospect. You have to understand the nuance of playing quarterback more than being an athlete to succeed early as a quarterback. And I think that's what everybody's missing. We all get enamored with the upside of this guy.
Oh, yeah. Trey Lance a few years ago, then Richardson.
Zach Wilson, who got me, right? That was one I was dead wrong on. Yeah, you go down the list, and it's like, well, wait a second. Like, do these guys play like quarterback in college, or did they run a little RPO dink and dunk college nonsense system
and have a big arm?
Right. And look, you can have a Kingsbury that comes in and, you know, helps Jaden Daniels because he understands that system and adapts it a little bit to the NFL. But for every one of those, then you've got a coordinator like the one we have, Brandon, who brings that sort of stuff to the league. And it's a struggle even for a multi-year vet.
Well, and I think the first half of Hugh's email just gets at the point where we were, even before the Seahawks fully decided on a coaching staff. I mean, there was that period where Mike Macdonald came on. He hadn't hired an offensive coordinator yet, where we talked about some of the reasons why you would want to go out and hire somebody with NFL experience then, because it does have that balance then of Mike's the defensive guy. He doesn't really need to worry about the offensive side of the ball because you have a guy who has the experience, and you had that opportunity too to probably do that with an assistant coach, and they lean more defensively there too, which it would have been more beneficial for the team to have more experience on the offensive side. They chose what they chose, and we've talked about the reasons why we think that Grubb has that capability then to learn and grow, because he's not so set in his ways, in appearance at least. We're just going to have to see that development though, and it may take some time.
You know, it's funny, Brandon, you talked about all these things before this season started and before the Ryan Grubb hire happened. You talked about all those things that you just laid out there. You were right before the fact that it all happened. And I think that's impressive, and you should get some credit for that.
I mean, even a blind squirrel finds a nut, to steal one of your phrases.
Yeah, exactly. Every once in a while, right? But at the end of the day, like, I mean, I think you know what your track record is. I'd put it up there against about anybody's.
I hope that I'm right then, that he can grow and build on it. And because I do, there are enough really good things that I see with his offense and some of the dynamics that if he were to structure it in a way that doesn't concede the line of scrimmage, rather than hoping for more of the explosive plays, rather than
concentrate on the bread and butters, like the 4 to 7 yard gainers, rather than a bunch of chunk plays.
It's going to make those explosive plays come so much more easily, because right now I feel like they're just dropping back in gun. And it's like, well, one of these 3 downs, we're going to find a dude open downfield for an explosive play. Yeah. And I would more rather have those not as wishful as part of the offense, and more of a build up toward those explosives.
Right. It's the offensive coordinator version of the crazy hot scale for chicks, right? Like, it's the same thing, like the explosives to variability scale. And I think we would both like a offensive coordinator with a lot less drama and more consistency. Like, that would be great.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, one of our emailers who has been very consistent over the years And, on the handsome scale, also up there very high is John the Bard. Hi, fellas. So I am feeling so bad I left the country and of north of Tromsø in Norway, somewhere in the Arctic Circle. The Northern Lights are way more entertaining than the Seahawks. Plus, McCaffrey has had a 100-yard game warming up for us this weekend. Oh, boy. At least we'll all pick the Hawks in the pick'em, and we can't fall behind. I was hoping we might want to trade for an O-line, but I haven't seen any news of one, although we don't have many draft picks left. I was hoping we'd get better as the season goes on, but the opposite seems to be true. I go into this weekend with hope more than expectation, but you never know. Or do you? Go Hawks! The Ice Bard.
Oh, man. We'll stay warm up there. And, I'm thinking that, there's a chance, like, they can win this. Like, we outlined it. I'm not totally pessimistic about it.
But the Bard is. The Bard is very pessimistic, especially when I hear him say, well, at least we all have to pick him in the league this week.
Yeah, exactly right. But, hey, at least he's got the Northern Lights for entertainment, so that's nice.
That should be fun. It's I feel like it's been a good year for Northern Lights here in Montana. Even I've gotten out to see them a couple times. Now maybe they're not as spectacular as they are inside the Arctic Circle, but at least we've had the opportunity here.
Yeah. Sun be burping out a bunch of stuff.
That's one way to put it.
It's also factually correct. So yeah.
Well, another correct fact is that we enjoy our members of the flock who have gone to getintheflock.com. They're helping to support the show, and they're in our Discord. Those of you who are supporting the show at $3 and above, a big thanks to you. No new flockers this week, but we do have our executive producers, DCH, Ryan Peterson, JC Schilling in the 313th, and Jake Burdine.
Look at that. See, carrying the load even when... the freeloaders that couldn't become flockers took a bye week as well. So thanks to them.
Well, I maybe needed to provide a little bit more direction that even though it wasn't a bye week for you and me or the rest of the flockers, but hey, I'm glad they enjoyed their week off. They can come back strong. They can spend the bye week deciding exactly how much value that they do get from this show. And then that way, when they do decide to support, it's going to be at just the right amount.
Just the right amount, and it'll feel right for everybody.
Guaranteed Barbecue there in Smeltersville, Idaho. I know he helps to support the show. We like to support him, too. And if you mention the Little Flocker discount, 12% off your order there at Guaranteed Barbecue.
Heck yeah, man. Check it out. I wish I was having a little Guaranteed Barbecue right now.
If I lived closer to Garen, I would have him cater my Thanksgiving.
If I lived closer to Garen, I would be 60 pounds heavier.
That's true. But maybe you find the happy medium to where...
Nope.
Fair enough.
Nope, I'd be the fatty patty boobalatti at that point. No doubt about it.
Okay, so it's probably good that he is where he is, and then that way you enjoy him and his barbecue just whenever you're driving through rather than
That's right.
each and every day.
Yeah, I could overdo it on Garen and his delicious smoked meats. I could.
But see, the thing is, you could go chicken and
what, chicken doesn't put on weight?
Well, depending how, you don't have to. Yeah, okay.
That's the most American claim I've ever heard you make right there.
Yeah, you just go with the chicken. It's less fatty.
Yeah, if I go to McDonald's and I get
the healthier choice. I'm trying to make healthy choices here.
Yeah, if I get the chicken Big Mac for
and
this
then
limited time.
I only get half nacho cheese sauce, I'm fine. I go with the chips. That way I'm not, it's a vegetable because you're then not carbing up on bread. You go with the chicken nachos. That I feel like is the appropriate balance. That's almost guaranteed to make you lose weight. It's health food.
Health food. There you go. The Brandon chicken nacho 20-pound Garth Brooks juice that.
Chips are my favorite vegan food.
I will go with you on that one.
All right. We've talked a little bit about the Pick'em League, but we haven't yet welcomed in our overlord, Evie. Dear underlings, a week with no Seahawks usually means not having to check up on people. But Bronco Jared, I am watching you. The deal was, if you don't have to pick the Seahawks, you must pick the Broncos. And you whelped. You picked the Chiefs, and the Broncos lost. As punishment, Brandon changed the pick to the Broncos, and Adam demand him to send you a WhatsApp of him holding a sign saying, I love Taylor Swift more than the Broncos.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. That's fun on 15 levels, but the only problem with it is there's no way that person knows Bronco Jared knows what WhatsApp is. Zero chance.
That's no. Well, I think that's how they text over in England. So I think just a text message is sufficient.
I might be able to get him to have the technical fortitude to pull that off, but that's still at the edges of Bronco Jared's capabilities. Yes. But I love those suggestions. I'm going to try to make it happen.
This week saw Adam win with 12 correct picks and the closest tiebreaker. That leaves him with 7 picks ahead of Brandon, 98-91, and winning 7-2 with a tie. I think I've lost count now. Quite frankly, Brandon, it's embarrassing on the weekly matchup. Thanks.
Hey,
Thanks,
man,
Evie.
it's just not his year. It's like me on Prop Stars this year, man. It is just not my year. I'm snake bit.
I'd be okay if the Overlord maybe chilled out a little bit on their condemnation of me and my picking skills.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. I think she should double down.
Overall, Wirehawks has maintained the lead on 105 correct from 4 people with 103 correct picks. There are then 9 more in joint 6th place on 102 picks. Dad is one of them. He had a reasonable week, picking 10 correct. He was grumpy with a couple of the teams this week and himself because he nearly changed one pick, then didn't. He did spend part of this week in Dublin, though. He waved through a portal there to Times Square. So if you were walking through Times Square and saw an odd man in a Seahawks shirt waving on Monday, it was my dad. Have a great week. Go Hawks. Love Evie.
Hey, love you back, Evie. And I'll be sure to make sure that Bronco Jared understands the full magnitude of his punishment here. But in his defense, I think all Broncos fans are suffering from such a severe case of Chiefs PTSD and that abusive nature of that quote unquote rivalry that I don't even know if he could have realized that he was picking the Chiefs, right? It's like, oh, we're playing Chiefs. Yeah, that's
Chiefs. Now, there's one thing that Evie, as Overlord, I will change the pick as per her wishes, but I will also make the claim that Jared probably was punished enough based on how the Broncos lost that game to the Chiefs.
Good call. Man, look, I understand that you make your own luck to a degree and all that stuff, but honestly, this run by the Chiefs, if it can go their way, it just really has.
Lining up for a last-second field goal to have it blocked. Oh, I suppose the one piece of solace was that he got his pick correct.
Yeah.
Not the way he wanted to.
Broncos are one legit receiver away from owning that division.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Come on, get there, Mims. My boomer sooner. Mims needs to grow and be that guy.
Wrong. Never will happen. They need to go trade for somebody or draft a true number 1.
Well, they could have had Mike Williams. He was a player that the Jets didn't want. Steelers found out that he couldn't catch game-winning touchdowns.
Well, like I said, they need to go out and draft or trade for a true number 1.
A true number 1. Gotcha. Okay. Well, I wouldn't put Mike Williams in the true number 1 category.
No, him and old-ass Keenan Allen?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I was just more making the point, trying to transition into a little bit of Russell Wilson conversation about the fact that he got the win. We got our pick correct. I'm still mad. I can understand why he was mad over not changing picks. I'm mad because I had the idea that I was going to use the Jags as my risk pick. Then I wanted to change it back and then pick the Saints as my risk pick. I would have had 2 picks better had I been allowed to do that in the Pick'em show when I was picking in the moment. And yet, No, everybody in there was like, "Oh, you already picked the Jags. Now you have to stick with them." I should have picked the Saints anyway.
Look, if you want to be a pick flip-flopper, you can do whatever you want, I guess. But at the end of the day, man,
it was a conditional pick based on the fact that I hadn't yet seen the Saints as a risk pick.
Yeah, the conditions were never set up front. And secondly, you just need to be a little more judicious with your picks as you go through it. Have some foresight. Don't just be YOLO snapping them like Connor Williams.
The Jags almost won that game too. They should have won that game.
I know. Yeah, there was I had a good week, but it was a lot of tight wins.
A lot of them, but it was fun. Fun week of football. A nice, relaxing one without having to worry about whether or not our Seahawks won or lost. And it worked to be a good mailbag week. So if you want to send in more questions for us to answer, go Hawks at SeahawkersPodcast.com. That was fun. What do you say we get on to some do better and better at life?
All right, man. Well, my do better this week, Brandon, is for whoever is in charge of the Commander Stadium and security there. Because I don't know if you saw this article, Brandon, but the Pittsburgh Steelers walked back into their locker room after warming up on the field, and there was a freaking snake that crawled out of Russell Wilson's locker and freaked everybody out, rightfully so, because snakes are evil and they'll try to take your soul any chance that they get. They're always plotting to kill you, always. Look out. Though they come back. Can you imagine walking back into your road locker room and all of a sudden some snake comes slithering out? Are you kidding me? That is unfreaking believable. I don't know how many of you have started listening since, more recently, but I'm terrified of snakes. The idea that you go back into the locker room and this nasty reptilian piece of evil comes out of Russell Wilson's locker, would freak me out more than anything. What would freak me out even more than that, Brandon, is that at the end of the day, they didn't catch the mother. Catfish! That thing slithered back in underneath Russell Wilson's locker somewhere, never to be seen again. It's probably plotting to kill one of the cheerleaders right now. So for whoever it is that is in charge of pest management at the Commander Stadium, do better.
Are we sure that it was a snake and not just Dan Schneider misidentified?
That's fair. I could see him trying to slither his way back in, but
you mentioned him going after a cheerleader. That seems Snyderish.
Snydery. Uh-huh. Yeah, no, for sure. No, it seemed to be of the reptilian variety. Gross. Oh, God, disgusting.
My do better this week is for a pair of folks in the Chicago media, Adam, because Mark Silverman, who is one of the hosts of the ESPN program Waddle and Sylvie there in Chicago, he came out with this report that not only did some of the veterans, they wanted that change of Shane Waldron at offensive coordinator. They got their way. Shane Waldron gone in Chicago. Mm-hmm. But the more explosive part of this report is that some of those veterans also wanted backup quarterback Tyson Bagent starting for the Bears. So that's the report. But then one of the producers on another Chicago station, 670, Shane Reardon was his name. He came out with his own report and said that there weren't any players asking for Tyson Bagent to start over Caleb Williams. It's this nonsense within the media where somebody comes out with a report with their sources, and then somehow there's another reporter that's in that same market. They're like, I talked to everybody, so I know that there couldn't have possibly been any veterans that had that that were a valid part of that report. It's nonsense. Shane Reardon, do your own reporting, report your own stuff. It doesn't have to refute what some other guy heard it from and talked to from other members of the team. Do better.
Well, in terms of this Reardon character, I don't need his report one way or the other to know whether or not there's a few players in that locker room that want Caleb benched, because I've seen the body language of all the receivers on that team. There's no possible way that DJ Moore doesn't want that dude sitting on the bench and Bagent brought in. There's no possible way that Cole Kmet wants Caleb Williams to be traded away to the Caribbean or something. Like, he's disappeared in that offense.
Komet was one of the guys that said that also said that the report was false, though.
Oh, I'm sure he did. Like, there's all sorts of lip service that comes out when your team's in a free fall like this. The team that was the best situation ever for a first round quarterback. That's just freaking hilarious.
Yeah, it has not gone the Bears' way necessarily. And who could have seen it coming, Adam?
Well, that's the thing. That's what drives me so crazy is that we all heard it this entire offseason about, it's the best situation ever. Look at all the skill position players. And, Eberflus has the defense playing well. And then they brought in Shane Waldron to get the best out of Caleb. And that was going to be a home run hire. And everybody thought it was great without doing an ounce of research. None of them knew what the hell they were talking about. And they're all talking about how Caleb's this generational talent and he's just perfect and flawless and all that. Now you're hearing reports of, all the flaws from college have followed him to the NFL. What flaws? You all told me he was perfect.
Right. Yeah, he was the perfect specimen at quarterback. That's why you draft him at number 1 overall. You can't miss.
Exactly. And it was like Merrill Hodge and little old me who was like, yeah, I don't know about that. He can't play from the pocket. He holds the ball too long. I actually went back and listened to what I said about Caleb in my quarterback deal the other day.
Just how right was I?
No, to know if am I in my own mind? Did I not say what I thought I said?
Yeah, because I think some of us too, when we think back, we have this idea of just how right we were in our own thoughts, but a part of it is we had that thought and then it's kind of evolved over the time. But yeah, it's more like just how right we were with the Let's Ride Curse.
Right, exactly. And the funny thing is that listening back to it, you go down the list of things that I talked about with Caleb and then go into this situation, bad O-line, Shane Waldron sucks, defensive head coach, this isn't going to work. Caleb's terrible in the pocket. He holds the ball too long. Ding, 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 ding. And all these other jokers that sat and told you the exact opposite have now completely changed their tune and act like they never said the thing they just said in the first place. It drives me crazy.
Adam Emmert, better at life than Skip Bayless.
No, I don't even want a pat on the back. At the end of the day, it's more just the idea of there's no accountability for these reporters at all.
Adam Emmert, also not a flip-flopper.
Exactly. Yeah. I get catfish wrong all the time, and that's fine. That's fine. But it's just some of this stuff is just it's infuriating to me.
On to better at life.
All right. My better at life than Skip Bayless this week, Brandon, is for a company that does not infuriate me. In fact, it's going to make everything for this show and for you little flockers better. I am so excited to be able to tell you, Brandon, that on Monday at 2:00, Tim from Hall, Montana of Blackfoot is going to be out here to do the final install on the fiber optic I've been waiting for a year and a half. It's happening, man. It's finally coming. And I'm going to be able to do more video stuff. I don't know. Maybe we'll do live streams during the games. I can actually edit stuff here and upload it and add to all the content that Clinton and Brandon put together for you guys. I think this is going to be a massive upgrade, and I'm just so excited. Look, and this isn't political law, but thanks, Biden, because this was part of his infrastructure bill, funding rural internet to podunk nowhere where I live. So it's worked out for my deal. And, man, I cannot believe it's finally happening. This is super exciting. Blackfoot Communications, better at life than Skip Bayless.
Well, I guess if we are going to be political, we have to give equal time to the Republican Congress that also helped pass it.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. They get credit too. No doubt about it. That's great.
All right. Yeah. See, there we hit both sides. Be happy, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just not often does anything they do over there in D.C. actually affect your life.
This is actually affecting you and everybody who listens to the show. As long as they don't pull an Abe Lucas on us and the Blackfoot dude has a bum knee and doesn't show up to do the install next week.
Tim's not soft. He'll make it. And the other thing is I do want to hear from some of the little flockers too. Are Are you guys into the idea of like a live stream of the game, like as I'm watching it? Because, Brandon, he takes that time to be with his family and all that. So I don't think that that's going to work for him. But my child's a grown human and doesn't care about me anymore, and rightfully so. I've got the time.
Yeah, well, reach out. Where should they email me? Or is there a good way for them to get to you to let you know? Where are you going to see it if people are excited about you doing in-game discussions?
Don't WhatsApp me. I can tell you that. But at
YouTube
the end of the
comments.
Day,
you read the YouTube comments, right?
I do. I actually do read the YouTube comments because I hate myself. So, yeah.
Well, there you go. YouTube comment at Adam if you want some live streaming during the game on game day.
Yeah.
Who says no?
And I don't know. Maybe a lot of people. Maybe they're like, I have enough of you every week. Like that's I'm good on that. That's fair.
My Better at Life this week is for Deshaun Shedd, former Seahawk. I don't know if you saw Coby Bryant's weekly interview this past week, Adam, but he gave credit to the former Seahawks player and former Seahawks defensive assistant, Deshaun Shedd, who I guess he's continuing to send him film clips every week. And it was Coby that he gave Shedd some credit for just his continued coaching and friendship that has continued even as Shedd is the current assistant defensive back coach for the Miami Dolphins. So despite no longer being a member of the organization, but continuing to have friendships within the organization and doing that for Coby Bryant, Deshaun Shedd, better at life than Skip Bayless.
I like this on a number of levels. Number one, Deshaun Shedd, by all accounts, by anybody in the coaching arena since he has left the playing arena, has all said that he is top notch in every single way and is well liked and respected around the league. So I think that's super cool for him to find that second career path when, it was just kind of tough for him to get the playing career going, especially with the injuries and everything there. So that's cool. The other cool part about this is that Deshaun Shedd is still taking time to help the Seahawks and taking time away from helping the stupid Dolphins. And I love that.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.